Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. You can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education Outreach and Engagement live stream, SAG-AFTRA Bootcamp, Commercials Contracts. We'll be pausing throughout today's presentation as we have with us Courtney Nimmersheim and Nicole Pancino, who will be translating the program into American Sign Language. Courtney and Nicole will be switching off periodically throughout today's discussion so that we have a seamless translation into ASL. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA on YouTube, along with a lot more great content. Now, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President, Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope that you're doing well. Well, we've put together a fantastic conversation for you today. We present SAG-AFTRA Bootcamp Commercials Contracts. But before we get to that, I just want to welcome Rebecca Damon, our National Vice President, who's joining us. Thank you, Rebecca, for being with us today.
Hello, Gabrielle.
It's good to have you. So we're here today to help you learn the basics of SAG-AFTRA's commercial contracts. We have an informative presentation put together for you that's going to highlight the important education for performers, such as the union's bargaining partners, the commercial audition process, residuals, and so much more. Now, there's tons of great info here, particularly for those of you who may be newer to the union or doing commercial work. In this virtual event, you're going to also have the opportunity to learn about how session and use are calculated, working conditions for principal and extra performers, editing, upfronts, and addressables. And for those of you who are watching online, if you have questions, as Pamela said, about today's discussion, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. Again, that's pteoe@sagaftra.org. Now, today, we are joined by one of our fabulous colleagues, Tracy Hyman. Tracy is SAG-AFTRA's National Director of the Commercials and Corporate Educational and Non-Broadcast Contracts Department. She administers and interprets the union's collective bargaining agreements and works to organize more job opportunities for SAG-AFTRA's 160,000 members. Additionally, Tracy routinely meets and discusses contract issues with the union's bargaining partners, known as the Joint Policy Committee, or JPC. And she also communicates with advertisers, advertising agencies, agents, casting directors, producers, and payroll companies. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this along over to Tracy, who will cover more about her role in today's topic in greater depth. It's so good to have you here, Tracy. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Gabrielle. I'm excited to talk about the contract, which is my favorite thing to talk about mostly. So I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see what it's all about. Okay. So the commercials contracts, the reason it's plural is because we have the commercials contract and we have the audio commercials contract. The contract is negotiated with the JPC, as Gabrielle said, and that's the Joint Policy Committee. They are made up of advertisers and ad agencies who are members of the Association of National Advertisers, the ANA, and the 4As, which is the American Association of Advertising Agencies. Those members authorize the JPC to negotiate on their behalf. We have other signatories who are called direct signatories. They wait to see what's been negotiated and they literally sign a letter of adherence to adhere to the contract. Both our direct signatories and our authorizers, I will call them signatories to make it easy, all have the same requirements, the same terms and conditions, and the same wages requirements. The commercials contract, we're proud to say, is average $1 billion a year in earnings. And let's find out how we do that. So principal performers, how do you get a job? Well, you'll start by looking at a casting breakdown. And on that breakdown, it should tell you the rate. It can say scale, but it cannot say must work for scale. There's always the opportunity to negotiate. Additionally, it should list the areas of exclusivity, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, and it should identify the intended use of the commercial. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to use it in this way, but it does give the performers information on what type of use they are contemplating. So you'll go to the audition and you'll see an Exhibit E. Now, mind you, with the pandemic, things have changed a little bit. So there are some digital sign-ins and some other methods that the casting directors are now using, but they are still keeping a record of who is there and when they sign in and when and sign out. So please make sure that you are signing out. And we encourage you always to use your SAG-AFTRA ID and not your social security number, just for safety reasons. You get booked for the job after a fabulous audition. You're going to come to set and you'll see this, the Exhibit A1. That is the principal performer employment contract. The entire thing should be filled out as much as possible before you sign it. And if you are not given a copy of it, you should absolutely take a picture of it so you have that record. On the back of the Exhibit A1, you'll see that there is an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. This non-disclosure agreement lays out items that you might learn during the audition process, that you might have learned during audition or during the filming of the commercial that are proprietary to the advertiser. However, this does not prevent a performer from disclosing their wages, hours, and terms of condition employment to their agent or to their union. So this does not prevent you from calling us and telling us of any concerns that you had or any issues that may have come up on set. What is a principal performer? Well, they're on-camera and off-camera performers. An on-camera performer, the day rate for an 8-hour day is $712, and for a voiceover for 2-hour segments is $535.40. Now, an on-camera performer can be what you think of, the individual who's speaking to the camera. It can be someone who's in a close-up shot. It could be singers, dancers, groups of singers or dancers, stunt performers, puppeteers, pilots, and anyone who's taught choreography, whether it be in a group or individually. The workday is an 8-hour workday with overtime kicking in after the 8 hours for the on-camera. And for the VO, it's 2-hour blocks of time. There is a night premium for principal performers that starts at 8 p.m. and goes to 6 a.m. And that gives an additional 10% of the hourly rate per hour. What is a stunt performer? Well, a stunt is simultaneous application of risk and skill. We do not have a term called precision driver. We have stunt drivers and we have vehicle drivers, stunt performers. So if you see something that says precision driving, inquire more, because that's actually a term under our commercials contract. If you get to set as an on-camera performer and they're asking you to do something that they did not give you advance notice of, that really is a stunt, you should bargain at the time of engagement for a stunt adjustment. Some other terms and conditions to keep in mind. If you are booked or held, you are due a session fee if you are canceled. Now, there's a difference between booked, held, and avail. If you're booked, you're engaged for the job. If you're held, we consider that an engagement for the job, which is why you're due a session fee if you're canceled. An avail, however, does not hold you for the job. It's merely asking if you're going to be available on a certain date. So if they do let you know that they're not going to be using you, there's no additional monies due to you. Rehearsals are considered regular work days and you get a session fee. Weekend and holiday work is paid at double scale. Meal breaks and per diem. Meal breaks are required after 6 hours. And if you're on a overnight location, you would be given per diem for any meal that the production does not supply you. Additionally, there are things called non-deductible meals. These can be announced on a commercial set at any time. They do not just have to be at breakfast. What they do is reset the clock for the 6 hours of when your next meal needs to be. They do not subtract from the work time. And you should be notified of the non-deductible meal when it's happening. For fittings and wardrobe, fittings are paid in 1 hour units with 15-minute intervals after the first hour. The wardrobe fee for a principal performer is paid per costume change, which is different than extras. So it's per costume change. Currently, since the pandemic began, we've been using the fitting fee as our guide for how to pay for COVID testing. So under the commercials contract, performers receive 1 hour of their session fee for a COVID test. So when are you going to get this money? After your session fee, 15 business days, the check should be postmarked, and that's business days from the date you work. For residuals or your use payments, they are 15 business days from the first use in that type of use. And there are late fees that become due. It is $4.08 per day, up to a 25-day maximum of $102. Now, as a principal performer, there are two things that can happen. You could be downgraded or you could be outgraded. A downgrade is when your face does not remain in the final edit, but a body part does. It could be the back of your head, it could be your arm. You should be notified 60 days from the date of session or 15 working days from the date of first use, and you are due a downgrade fee, which is the same as a session fee. Now, the other obstacle is the outgrade fee. It's an outgrade. There is no fee for an outgrade. That is when no part of you remains, so that your scene is cut completely from the commercial. You are not due any additional monies and you are not due residuals. So I mentioned earlier exclusivity. That is when you're not allowed to work on a competing product. And you're paid for this exclusivity. That's what the holding fee is. So a holding fee is equal to a session fee, $712 is the scale. And you receive that every 13 weeks. That's what lets you know you are still being held to conflict and that the company has the right to use the commercial. If they are holding more than a direct conflict, so let's say you shoot a Pepsi spot and they're holding soda, you would not be allowed to go out for a Coke commercial. If they added, that's your direct conflict. If they add another area of competitive product like juice, they would now have to pay you an additional amount of money, in fact, 50% of session, to hold for 1, 2, or 3 additional indirect conflicts. Beyond that, it's double scale. And again, this holding fee is what keeps you exclusive to the product. Now, the holding fee is paid at the beginning of each 13-week fixed cycle, which we'll look at in a second. But that payment can be applied to the use payment. So you can think of it like a down payment on use that they will subtract from your use payment during that 13-week cycle. So as you see on this chart, the maximum period of use of a commercial is 21 months. That means that a producer has the right to use the commercial and compensate you during a 21-month period. It's divided into 7 13-week cycles, which each of the dashes on the line represent. Now, keep in mind that the holding fees are set at every 13 weeks, but use, while use is at every 13 weeks, it can start and end anywhere within that 21 months. It does not necessarily line up with when the holding fees are due. The easiest way to remember 21 months is to spring forward 2 years from your work date, and then fall back 3 months. So prior to April 1st, 2019, commercials that were shot then, the agent or the performer had the responsibility to reach out to this advertiser or signatory company to request that they contact them if they continue to want to use the spot, to renegotiate for continued use. For any commercial shot after April 1st, that has shifted now to the signatory company, and they have to contact you or your agent 60 to 120 days before the MPU expires to discuss renegotiating for continued use. Now, if the producer cannot find you, they'll come to us, to SAG-AFTRA, and we have 30 days to assist them in finding you. So please make sure you're updating your contact information with membership and that you're keeping the agent's professional representative department updated on who your current agent is so that we are sure we'll be able to find you if this opportunity arises. Now, this is what we've all been waiting for, residuals. This is the meat of working on a commercial, right? So we'll start with the Class A use. This type of use, it's paid per use on a declining rate scale. And it's be airing on one of the majors like ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. So an example is you're watching Grey's Anatomy. Yes, I am still a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy. If you're watching it and in the first commercial break, you see a Dove commercial, and you see it in LA and somebody else sees it in Florida and somebody in New York. So everybody watching at the same time sees that Dove commercial, that's going to be a Class A commercial. They get paid every time it's used and it resets every 13 weeks. So you'll start at use 1, go all the way up, and then start again at the next 13-week cycle of use back down at 1. Now, Wild Spot is also going to be seen on those same networks. But the difference is this is when the advertiser picks and chooses what cities or markets they want the commercial to air in. So for example, watching the same Grey's Anatomy after the Dove commercial, let's say in LA, they see a Carl's Jr. commercial, and in Florida, they see an Orange Julius commercial. That's showing that it's a wild spot. They picked which cities, and every city or market has a unit value attached. And to figure out the wild spot, the payroll company adds together all of those units of markets that have been purchased, and that equals a set amount of money. That money represents unlimited use during that 13-week cycle in those particular cities. Then there is dealer use. This you'll usually see with automobile commercials. And it's when the corporate creates a commercial and then all the dealers use that commercial, but put their own tags or add, Toyota of Orange County, things like that on it. Because it would be impossible to check all of the wild spot locations and all of the cities, instead we've created a flat fee that covers 6 months of use, and it can be used by any of these dealers. Next is cable. And cable is paid similar to wild spot, where you're paid upfront for the number of cable stations. They add together all those values. It's unlimited airings during that 13 weeks. And it caps at 3,000 units. So even if they use more than 3,000 units, our payments are capped at 3,000. Now, theatrical industrial exhibition, you may remember back when we used to go to movie theaters and you'd be sitting in the movie theater and you'd watch a Coke commercial. That's an example of theatrical industrial use. It could be at audio shows, jumbotrons, point of purchase. And when they purchase theatrical industrial use, they can either do it for 30 days or for the full 21 months of the MPU. If you're hired to work under the Spanish language portion of our contract, you are paid the same session fee, but residuals are slightly different because of the program, national program like Telemundo and Univision. There's also Wild Spot. They do get exclusivity in the Spanish language market, but not the general or English language market. If they want exclusivity, they need to pay an additional 50%. And now they have both the Spanish market and the English market. A seasonal commercial does not hold exclusivity. It's for a 13-week cycle during a season, like Christmas or Valentine's Day. They pay a holding fee at the end of the 13 weeks, but it doesn't actually hold you to the conflict. It just gives the company the right to use the commercial at the next season that it fits with. And that should be marked on your A1 contract. For foreign use, we do not consider use in Canada, the United States, or Mexico foreign use. That's all part of the Class A, Wild Spot, Cable, the domestic buy. The countries are split into 5 regions outside of North America. When they purchase foreign use, it's for a full 21-month period. And if they are purchasing it with including internet only for the country that they're showing it in, so they geofence it to that area, then internet is included. If they intend to exhibit on internet broadly, then they would still have to pay the internet or new media fee. Internet and new media. Internet is everything from Facebook and Pinterest, YouTube, an advertiser's website, buying time on WashingtonJournal.com. That would all be internet. They can either be made for internet or move over from TV over to the internet. And a producer could buy a 4-week, 8-week, or 1-year cycle. Now, new media is very similar, except we're looking at where does it originate? Is it originating as an app? So Instagram is the most common example of new media. And just like with the internet, there's made for and move over and 4-week, 8-week, and 1-year cycles. Producers do have to pay both the internet and the new media to use it in both locations. One other thing to note is that simultaneous streaming is allowed. What that means is, again, I'm watching Grey's Anatomy on television, and my best friend is watching it on the internet 3 states over, but we're watching it at the exact same time and seeing the same commercials. That is simultaneous streaming. It is not when someone downloads or watches it later. It's literally when it's airing on the television for that time and replaying, essentially streaming onto another device. Pension and health. You receive pension and health at top of all of your earnings. Pension and health is at 19% for non-JPC authorizers and 18.5% for authorizers. Again, that's paid on top of all of your earnings. And it's paid directly to the plans, which, as you know, SAG-AFTRA plans are a separate entity from SAG-AFTRA. So if you have any questions about the pension and the health plan, please contact them directly. Editing under the traditional contract. So there's something called the shorter longer. We call it the mechanical edit, because a long time ago when commercials were shot on film, they would literally cut the film and tape it together to make the shorter version. So we still use it. They're allowed 1 free mechanical edit, and that counts as 1 for use purposes with the original commercial. And if a producer would like to make 2 more, they can pay a session fee for the second and a second session fee for the third mechanical edits, but all of them count as 1 for use purposes. We also allow packaging variations to be shown in the same market. So you could have a Febreze Fresh Step and a Febreze Unscented and a Febreze Hawaiian Scent, all airing in the same market, same commercial, just a variation, and that would count as 1 for use purposes. And additionally, for special offers and promotions, they can use those for 6 weeks at a time before needing to change out the promotion. Each one of those promotion changes to the main commercial also counts as 1 for use purposes. Okay, let's get into some of our waivers. We have the social media and YouTube waiver. This is when you come to set and they let you know they're using this waiver, and they shoot commercials during the day, and they only have to pay you 1 session fee. These commercials can only be used on social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. They're allowed, every commercial cut is its own commercial. They're paid in 30-day use increments at 15% of session for use on social media and an additional 15% for YouTube. There is no exclusivity. They cannot be used anywhere else but social media sites. So they cannot put them on abc.com or Hulu or the advertiser's website. The other waiver that gets talked a lot about is the low budget digital waiver. And this waiver came about because we were seeing that we were not getting the digital work, and we wanted to make sure that our performers had that opportunity. It allows use on internet and new media and over the top like Hulu and Netflix. Only signatory advertisers and ad agencies are allowed to use it. And they have to have a budget of no more than $100,000 for the production day to be able to be eligible. The session fee is negotiable, as is use and edits, as long as it's only content being shot under the low budget digital waiver. We call that an unconnected shoot. If it is a connected shoot, meaning it's shot on the same day as a traditional commercial, edits and use are still negotiable, but the scale session fee of $712 is still required to be compensated. This is based on an 8-hour day with overtime kicking in after 8. As I said, everything is negotiable. They have to give notice to performers at audition that they're using the low budget digital waiver. And it has an MPU of 1 year. This waiver will sunset, meaning it will not be able to be used unless voted to continue March 31st of 2022, which is when this contract term ends and we start negotiations for the next term. Finally, not finally, but super excited, we have the influencer agreement and the influencer waiver, which I'm sure you have seen put everywhere. We've been trying to publicize it and a lot has been said about it. This is an opportunity for individuals who are union members and who want to become union members, but who do influencer content to be able to work under a union contract. So this means that the influencer produces, writes, edits, lights, films themselves, and distributes the content. There is no third party involved doing the filming or writing the script. This is truly influencer generated content. This agreement is not available to our signatory companies. That's the waiver. The standalone agreement is available to influencers who are incorporated, have their own corporation. They are not using anyone else in their content. They can exhibit it on their social media feed, as well as the advertiser social media feeds, YouTube channels, and websites. And it cannot be combined with any other of the services. This is purely influencer created content. They can use it for 1 year. The influencer's company is who signs the agreement with the union. And it's the influencer's company that pays into pension and health the 19% of the covered services. And in this agreement, it has been determined that approximately 20% of an influencer's income in this, or payment for a production, is 20% is covered services. There is no follower account minimum. Any influencer can use this. They do have to do it alone, but we are evolving this agreement. Every day we've made tweaks to it, and we're hoping that we will be able to grow this agreement to give more people the opportunity to work underneath it. Another piece of this is that the influencer has to own the intellectual property. They have to own the content, and they must have a contractual relationship with the brand itself. The influencer waiver is a waiver that falls under the umbrella of the commercials contract. So this allows signatory companies, JPC authorizers and direct signatories, to use a similar structure as the influencer agreement. The influencer is still generating their own content. The influencer will be told that the waiver is being used. It can be used on the website, social media, and YouTube channels of the influencer, advertiser, and agencies. Pension and health, again, is paid only on covered services. And there needs to be permission from the performer to use it in any other medium. And this waiver also expires March 31st, 2022. So those are our waivers under the traditional contract and our agreement. Now we're going to turn to the new upfront packages that came into existence on April 1st of 2019. We created these to position ourselves to recapture some of the work that has been lost. We see this as a great opportunity to give signatory companies a simplified method of paying the performers by knowing upfront what payment will be due. And it gives the performers a sense of security knowing what payment they will be receiving for that commercial. If a company or advertiser wants to use the upfront packages, they must put that information in the booking and make it in the breakdown. And they have to be specific on which upfront package they're going to be using. These are upfront payments. You're not receiving payments every 13-week cycles. You're not receiving a holding fee every 13 weeks. There's no crediting of session. You get your 712, and then you have a payment for use. And exclusivity is built into that upfront payment, which is why you're not receiving holding fees every 13 weeks. It's been calculated in. And this has a 1-year maximum period of use. So let's start with the Upfront Plus. The Upfront Plus is an upfront payment to the on-camera performer of $20,000 for 1 year's use. This payment is due either within 60 days of a performer's work date or 15 business days after the first use, whichever is shorter. It includes all types of use that we mentioned previously, including 10 Class A. After the 10th Class A, performers are paid per Class A at $100. Their exclusivity, again, is built in, and there are expanded editing rights that apply only to the upfront payment structures. If a company would like to expand the direct conflict, like we talked about before with soda and juice, there are additional percentages of session that are due for each one of those added areas of conflict. The Upfront Flex. This is an $8,000 guarantee. So this is different than the Plus, which has a set $20,000 payment. This is an $8,000 guarantee with, again, exclusivity built in. The way this works is every type of use, as you see here, has a set figure. So in WildSpot, we're no longer counting the markets. In cable, we're no longer counting the cable channels. Instead, there's a set use payment for 13 weeks. As the producer uses the Upfront Flex and uses these payments, they chip away at the $8,000 guarantee. Once the producer has used up the $8,000 guarantee, performers will be paid these rates above the $8,000. So that $8,000 is just an initial guarantee. If a producer does not use all $8,000, the performer still retains that guarantee. And then there's Upfront Digital. In this, we collapse the internet and new media into one payment, and that's $38.25 for the on-camera principal. In this, just like in traditional, there is no exclusivity. So if a company, an advertiser wants exclusivity, they must negotiate with the performer for no less than 4 holding cycles or 4 holding fees to be paid upfront. And just like with the traditional, they can then increase those amounts of exclusivity if they want to add areas. Now, what we did is we created specific editing rules for the upfronts. We have the permitted edits, and these are very similar to what the permitted edits are under the traditional contract, like shorter, longer, except we allow them to have 5 shorter, longer versions without any additional payment. Those all count again as 1 for use purposes. Dealer tags, dealer IDs, network changes, things like that. Performers would still get paid for recording the tag, but the commercial still counts as 1 for use purposes. And if they want to rearrange the on-camera material, they're allowed to do that under the permitted edits. Additionally, they can change the off-camera message and run them both. They could call something hot and spicy on the East Coast and something tangy on the West Coast, and both of those would count as 1 commercial. For foreign language, the on-camera performers, if nothing changes and they're just changing the VO, the performers get the payment for the use of the commercial, and it counts again as 1. So if an English and a French commercial are both running, then they'll be paid as one for use purposes. And finally, the special offers and promotions. You could be changing what the special offer is from a biscuit sausage to an egg burrito, and these are all allowed under the permitted edits. Now we have something called paid edits. And this is where the performer gets paid for the edit, but the use is still one with the original spot for use purposes. So an example is if you change a product, but it's in the same product line. So you have a Ford F-150 truck, and you have the same spot, but you use a Ford F-250. That would be allowed. Performers would be paid an additional edit payment to account for that change, but both spots would count as one for use purposes. They can also change the setting through CGI or green screen. And what we are looking at is a session fee for the original, for the first edit, and then a decreasing scale for each edit after that. And finally, if there are no permitted edits and no paid edits in a new spot, it's a new spot and it gets paid as a whole new commercial. We also built in addressable edits, which is when basically they take information they know about you and about the household, and through an algorithm, there are changes made to a commercial so that they are sent to the appropriate household. For example, if my neighbor likes to snowboard and I like to surf, I would be getting same commercial, but with a surfboard, and they'd be getting the same commercial with a snowboard. That's what addressable editing is. It's not when they're purchasing specific cities or locations to air a spot in. It's when there's demographic data that's collected, and that's what alters what is being sent out. Let's talk about extra performers. They have an A2 employment contract, looks very similar to the A1. Please make sure it's filled out with smoke wet pay, the wardrobe you bring, all of the necessary information before you sign it. And again, if you're not given a copy, please take a picture of it. And there is still an NDA on the bottom of this contract as well. Stand-ins can be working crowd work. They could be, an extra could be a stand-in, meaning they're just being used for lighting purposes. They could be a photo double, meaning they're actually being photographed. They could be a hand model. They could be asked to do an omni, like, woo, yay, but they can't be given actual words or sentences to say. The rate for an extra performer is $388.40 for an 8-hour day. There is night premium that begins at midnight for extra performers, which is different than the principal performers. Their night premium does not start, night premium applies to everybody the same. Saturday is when there's a difference between principal and extra. For an extra, at midnight, their Saturday rate begins at double scale. For principals, it's work that starts on Saturday. Sorry about that. Its night premium applies again with an additional payment for hours after 8 p.m. Overtime kicks in after the 9th hour, time and a half for the 9th and 10th, double time for 11 through 16, and after 16 hours, you get an additional session fee per hour. Meal breaks must be called every 6 hours. They must be between 30 and 60 minutes, just like principal performers. All the things are the same, including non-deductible meals. Now for the wardrobe allowance, this is where the difference comes from principals. Extras are compensated for the outfits that they are asked to bring, not just wear, but what they're actually asked to bring. So if you're asked to bring 4 outfits, you'll be paid for 4. If you bring 6, you're still only going to be paid for the 4 if that's what was requested. The fittings is also the 1-hour fitting fee for extras is $48.55, and that applies for the COVID test. And travel for extras automatically receive an $8 payment for travel within the studio zone. If they are traveling outside the studio zone, they get the $8, and then straight time payments in quarter-hour units from the edge of the zone to the location. If there is a courtesy van, but you choose to drive yourself, your start time will be the start time that there's call on set, where the start time for individuals who take the van will be their reporting time at the van. Now, you may have heard about upgrades. This is when an extra performer meets 3 criterion in the final edit at the same time. So you have to be in the foreground, meaning where the action is, where the principal performer is. You have to be identifiable, and you have to be responding or reacting to the message of the commercial. Again, all 3 must be met simultaneously to be eligible for an upgrade. And a little bit before and a little bit behind the principal is going to fail that one piece of foreground. So that will not make you eligible. So you have to make sure you're meeting all 3 at the same time. So that's the commercials contract. We're going to go quickly into the audio commercials contract. This was also, AudioFlex was also created and put in the 2019 commercials contract. This is simple. An advertiser only needs to know where they're listening, their listeners, that's their location. How are they listening? Are they listening on terrestrial or digital or both? And how long does the advertiser want to run the spot to expose their customers to the advertisement? As long as they have those 3 pieces of information, the AudioFlex is going to make it very simple to figure out what payment's going to be. In fact, we created an AudioFlex calculator that you can find online that will calculate out for you and for producers how much it will cost to do a union audio commercial under the AudioFlex. We also have the dynamic audio waiver, which is again where a body of a commercial is altered based on specific demographic information, basically mechanically. Individuals aren't creating separate commercials, but there's an algorithm that inserts certain pieces of information into a recorded commercial and sends out to specific people. And that's the dynamic audio waiver. VOs working on an audio commercial are paid 90-minute increments. I'm sorry, under AudioFlex, it's 60 minutes at $500 per session, and any additional time is paid in half-hour increments. As you can see, we've divided up the country into regions, and this is what we also use under AudioFlex to help simplify the contract for our advertisers. Now, things to remember. Do not place yourself in a bad position when you're on set. We are here to do that and take the heat from producers and signatory companies. Either call us after the production. If you're able to call us during while something is happening on set, please do so. And we will immediately take action in trying to remedy the situation. Please always make sure that there's an actual signatory on the commercial you're going to be working on to make sure that you're working under contract. We've developed a new online claim portal that you can submit a claim through SAG-AFTRA.org/claims. We also have a portal for our influencer agreement. There's now a portal for reporting harassment issues. So please take a look at the website. There's also, if you go to SAG-AFTRA.org/videos and you click on commercials, you'll see a video about the upfront packages, about the influencer agreement. There's a lot of great information. And of course, you can always send an email to our general inbox at commem.coedinfo@sagaftra.org. So thanks, everyone. I know that was a ton of information. Rebecca, I can only imagine the questions that are speeding in. We'll see what we can answer, but if you have questions that aren't answered, please feel free to email them to this account. So great. I'm going to.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. And
sure.
yes, there were questions, and this doesn't have to, we want to keep the education coming, so we can always do more in addition to that. So let's get a couple of here's a great question. Well, we actually have so many great questions. Do all commercial shoots follow these provisions that are set out in contracts? Am I expected to learn all this stuff on my own? Should my agent or manager handle this for me? I can just envision the person going, it's so much. So what do you say to that?
So much. So essentially all commercials follow these, but we cannot expect you to memorize this book. That's why we're here, the business reps. Your agent should be able to help you through this. Your manager should be able to help you through this. It's always important to be educated on the work that you're doing, but there is no way, unless you spend every day with it like we do, to expect you to know everything. So please, any question, you can call us. Nothing is too small.
Yeah, but it's good. We want people to get the education and learn as much as they can, because the more we know, the more empowered we are. So that's good. So how do members have a voice or participate in the next round of like contract negotiations? How does that work?
Oh, perfect question, because that's going to be coming up quickly. If you can believe it, this contract is expiring March 31st of 2022. I can't even wrap my head around it. I feel like we just finished. But look for in October, November, we'll be having the wages and working conditions meeting, which are the W&Ws. And that's our members' opportunity to come in and talk about concerns they have with the contracts, things that they would like to see changed. And this is where the proposals are developed, the committee is formed. And remember, Rebecca, people kind of forget sometimes it's the members that create this contract. And it's our members who give us the voice to tell to JPC. So definitely keep your eye out. We'll be having education seminars and WW meetings as we get that ready.
Great. We have a question. I'm still confused about the various upfront plans. Is there a way to understand how they're unique?
Perfect. Go to sagaftra.org/videos, click on commercials. We have an upfront video. We have an upfront editing video. There's a ton of videos that we've created on the contract, on the influence agreement, and specifically on the upfronts. So that I think will help it. There are a lot of graphics. So that's always a good way to learn.
Yeah, some of us are visual learners, so we want to have it in as many ways as we can. Do these contracts cover longer form advertising too? This person also said like a 5-minute advertorial.
Yes, it is not limited. There may be additional monies due to performers for longer length commercials. And sometimes there's a crossover between the commercial and the corporate educational contract, which is the other contract we handle in our area. Those are really more in-depth explanations. So the best example is a Toyota commercial talking about brand new brakes. When you go to the Toyota dealership, there's a video and it's talking about the hydraulic system and exactly how it works and what kind of tires. That would be a corporate education because it's giving a more in-depth information. So really depending on what that presentation is in that longer version would determine if it's a commercial or maybe falling into our co-ed world.
Great. We have a question about, I think somebody wasn't 100% sure that they followed everything that went through. And so they want to make sure they understand what's the difference between contracts and waivers.
Okay.
Walk through that.
That's great. So contracts are what we negotiate across the table with the JPC. Like I said, W&Ws, we create proposals, they're put to the JPC, they give us proposals, and we negotiate the contract. During the life of the contract, we may find that we didn't address something or something new, like the influencer agreement and influencer waiver, develops and gets bigger over time. So these are waivers that our committee, our commercial standing committee creates, works with, and we work with the JPC during the term of the contract to create some of these waivers. Most of the waivers do have expiration dates, so we can see if they're working or not, or it may be something we do want to include at the next negotiation. We just have to see how it works.
Great. And that's the Commercial Contract Standing Committee, or we have our alphabet soup here at SAG-AFTRA, or the CCSC. So those are members that work under those contracts that participate in all that, just so it's clear, so that people don't walk away and go, all these things, what were they? We've got a question. What do I, I think this is really important. What do I do if I suspect an employer, today is a day where nobody can talk, isn't abiding by the terms set forth in the commercials contract? What should people do?
Number of different things. You can call us immediately, let us know what's going on and file a claim. You can always talk to your agent, have your agent reach out to us. And like I said, we have a new online claim portal. So if something wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you realize this just isn't right, you can go to sagaftra.org/claims and you can submit a claim right through the portal and it will come straight to our email and to our business reps.
Great. We're advancing all that technology. That's great. So we have one last question we're going to be able to squeeze in before we run out of time. I'm a dancer and I've heard these contracts apply to me too. Is this true?
Absolutely. So we have on-camera dancers, solo, duo, and we have group rates as well. If you are choreographed, if you are asked to choreograph something, if you fit into the other definitions of principal performers, all of that, even if you are an extra performer and you're asked to dance, but you're not necessarily choreographed, all of that you would be covered by the union contract.
Great. That was great. We could just keep doing this, but unfortunately we've run out of time, but it was good. We got a lot done in a short amount of time and we will do some more education. So I want to thank you, Tracy, for the great presentation today. And I want to thank everybody also for on our SAG-AFTRA team here, our contracts team, for all the work that you do on behalf of the union. And if, as Tracy mentioned, if you want to go get more info, you can look at sagaftra.org/commercials, sagaftra.org/commercials to make sure. If you want to look all this up, you can also check this video. It'll be on the YouTube gallery or on the gallery on sagaftra.org. While you're here, why don't you subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel so that you can get any updates on any of this content. Again, thank you on behalf of the President's Task Force of Education, Outreach, and Engagement. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Being empowered is part of what we do. And so I want everybody to have a great day. And I'm glad you could have learned some more today with Tracy. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks,
no problem. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.